Welcome to Tucker Carlson today. So on our nighttime show not long ago, we were doing a segment on the mass incursion, that's not an overstatement, of men, biological men, into women's sports and their sudden dominance in women's sports, and asking the question, what does this mean for actual women who are trying to compete against other actual women without the biological advantage of massive upper body strength? In the course of that script, we threw to a soundbite. It was shot in March of 2022 at an NCAA swimming event in Atlanta, Georgia, in which Leah Thomas, a biological man, was competing against women. Now, it's shot in the stands, and there's a woman sitting there with a foreign accent, you'll see it in a second, from the UK, and a transgender rights person comes up and starts interrogating her about her views. This is her response. Here's the clip that we played. Watch.
I'm a woman. That is not a woman.
Can I ask you a question?
That is not a woman.
Can I ask you a question?
Do you have ovaries?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go on then ask me a question. Ask me a question.
Are you a biologist?
Oh my God, don't be ridiculous. No, I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is.
Are you a biologist? Don't be ridiculous. I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is. That was like the greatest distillation of common sense we'd seen in a long time. And so we immediately started to find out, who is this person who would say something like that? And that person turns out to be Kellie-Jay Keen. She's founder of Standing for Women in the UK. And we're very happy to have her in our studio right now. Kellie-Jay Keen, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
I just love that clip. First of all, because you approached it with humor, which is crystallizing, clarifying, like you just. So who are you and how did you wind up there?
Well, I'm a women's rights campaigner, and I've been doing this since about 2015 and very seriously since 2018. And this sport issue in America really crystallizes exactly what's going on for the masses in the fact that men can't actually be women.
Wait, so how did you wind up? So feminism has been a force in the West, in the United States, and the United Kingdom for 60 years. But with the addition of this new wrinkle, this idea that people can change their biological sex at will, it's really kind of short-circuited the whole feminist movement, and most of the established feminist groups will not touch this at all.
Yeah.
In fact, they're on the other side working against women, I would argue. How did you get involved in this?
Well, I think it helps that I'm not actually a feminist.
Okay.
And I'm not a feminist for a multitude of reasons. One is that I don't think it's very helpful to bring all women into looking at their rights if we decide that we ring fence it with the word feminism. The fact that feminism right now is pro-sex work, pro-trans, really anti-women in many aspects,
Yes.
also helps me not identify as a feminist.
If you're for prostitution, you're probably not on the side of women, you're on the side of the pimp.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so, again, so nicely put. Thank you for sex work. My God. But what were you doing? Like, how did this grab your attention, and how did you decide this is important enough that I want to get really involved?
Well, my organisation, Standing for Women, we've been working in the UK, and we've fully acknowledged that a lot of this culture is coming from the US. A lot of the money's coming from the US. A lot of the pharmaceutical power is coming from the US. And so I can put out fires in the UK, but really it's all coming from the United States. So it has to be fought here.
Well, I think you're exactly right, and it's our ugliest, most destructive export, and that's saying a lot. I would say even worse than our armaments that we send abroad, because it corrodes the human soul. But were you aware of this?
Yeah.
Like, have you been aware of this for a long time?
Yeah, 2015, I came across this. So I was in an online women's group, and then it was being populated by lots of men. Now, I would call those men autogynephiles, which means that they are very happy with themselves embodying female clothing and identities. And by happy, I mean aroused. And so it just became populated. And when I raised the question, like, are these people women? The vitriol was just something I'd never experienced, both from women and these men. And so I thought, well, I can't talk about it, so that's all I want to talk about. And I was a stay-at-home mum, happily married, stay-at-home mother of 4. And then this came up, and I was like, I'm just not having it.
What did they say? So you asked, as you just said, a simple question: Are these really women? Mm-hmm. And what was the response that you got?
Yes, you're evil, you're a transphobe, you're a bigot, you're hateful for even questioning men that really did look like 60-year-old men in women's clothing with their soft focus pictures and, this exchange of women fawning all over them. It's really bizarre. And I just thought, look, I'm just not having it. I've got 4 kids. One of my children is a daughter. And I'm just not having it. She deserves to go wherever she wants, female-only spaces, and expect not to see a single man in that space. That's not too much to ask.
No, I think it's kind of been the arrangement for all human civilization. And so you say that, I mean, I don't think that's a radical or, quote, anti-trans statement. Did anybody say, that's a fair point? No,
you're not allowed to say it. And I was on the left. And so it's specifically in lefty groups, the vitriol was unbelievable. So I would have this question, does my 11-year-old daughter have the right to use a female-only space and not see an adult male appendage? If I put it that way. And I was told, no, you're raising a transphobe, she's a bigot, she's a pervert. If your daughter was looking at people's genitals, I'm serious. I'm serious. Like I felt like I was in an episode of The Body Snatchers. It was so weird.
So your daughter doesn't have okay, so if there's some naked dude swinging around in the women's locker room or bathroom, it's your daughter's fault. She's the criminal for noticing?
Yeah. Yes, 100%. Yeah, that's how mad it is. You can't question a single tiny element of this dogmatic, quasi-religious movement, because if they answer truthfully anything, it's game over, because it's not real.
It's not real. That is absolutely the most basic observation about it. I just take a quick detour because I'm interested in your thoughts. Like, where does this come from, do you think? I mean, it comes from the U.S., you're absolutely right. But what would take a perfectly sensible, rational, middle-aged adult and transform that person into, like, some weird programmed cult member?
I don't know. I wonder if there is a general infantilization of a population in which you can convince them of this stuff. But then, if we look in history, it doesn't take that much to convince a population of something preposterous or evil. I'm not saying that this is like Nazi Germany, but perfectly reasonable people became tyrannical, evil humans and participated in something just so vile. I don't think it's beyond the wit to look at history and think, we've always been able to do this. I mean, we just had it with the pandemic. There are easy ways to convince people to do stuff. What worries me is that so many are willing to do it without even thinking. There's no thinking. Like, really, does a little girl not deserve the privacy away from a grown man? Or even just women? Don't I have the right to be able to get undressed somewhere or go to the loo without worrying that there's a man in that space? Like, how insane.
So you were a Labour voter, I assume?
I was, yeah.
No. You say was. Is there anyone, is Jeremy Corbyn on board with this stuff? Is there anyone in the Labour Party in the UK who's like, I'm a traditional feminist. I'm like for women. Anyone left?
No. Well, even if they are, they can't speak because then they don't get elected and they get harassed out of their job. There's an MP called Rosie Duffield. She's spoken up a little bit. But I think I don't know whether I was a complete idiot, but I didn't realise the misogyny of the left was quite so rampant. And it is so rampant.
Tell me what you mean.
Well, very many of them are pro-pimp. In the left, on the left, and they really are. They're pro-pimp and they're anti-women. They don't seem to think that a woman is allowed to assert what a woman is. They do think that the dictionary definition of the word woman is a transphobic dog whistle. I'm serious.
I don't know why I'm laughing. It's civilization ending, I would say.
I know, I really do think these are the last days of Rome.
Yes, I think you're right. So you start just making common sense observations about observed reality.
Yes.
What happens?
Well, I get cancelled, so I've not been allowed to be on Twitter since 2018. Even the Mumsnet, the parenting forum, I'm banned from. But that was asking an MP to drink. I asked an MP, what is a woman? And I said, if you answer, I will drink a bottle of Prosecco through my nose. Because I know you're not going to do it. And she didn't, and I got banned.
Wait, you got banned for asking a member of parliament to define what a woman is?
Yeah. Yeah.
You radical.
I know, I am practically evil personified. I'm banned from change.org. I'm not allowed to sign a petition on change.org at all. I'm just banned from their platform completely, and Patreon.
Well, so you can't get funding either.
No.
On what grounds were you banned from those platforms?
It's normally some sort of generic hate speech style email that I'm hateful, promoting hate.
It's hard to take this because it's so totalitarian. At what point did you intersect with law enforcement in the UK?
So that was before I sort of had much of a profile. So 2018, I got a text. Who knew? I got a text from the British police saying they wanted to talk to me, and I just assumed it was a joke because I didn't know we were that badly funded. So they're like, we'd like to talk to you, and I just said to some friends, oh, I think this is rubbish. But no, the CEO of a charity called Mermaids, which I would define as a lobby group promoting transgenderism to children, she reported me to the police because I said I thought it was profound child abuse to take her son to Thailand to be castrated and have sex reassignment surgery at 16. It was actually on his 16th birthday.
She had her son castrated?
Yeah. Age 16, the youngest person in Thailand, and I think since then you can't do it until you're 18. Personally, I don't think it should ever be done. But she'd reported me, and they tried to do me for hate speech, conspiracy, because other people agreed with me, malicious communications, nuisance, public order. So it was a whole
Wait, she
barrage.
had her 16-year-old son castrated in a foreign country. You said you thought that was wrong. The police visited your house, but did they? I mean, she had her son castrated, but no cops visited her house.
No, because what she did was empowering. In fact, during the police interview, the hate crime officer, which is just a nonsense in itself, but the hate crime officer said, did you know that sex reassignment surgery doesn't include castration? And I just thought, what does he think it is? If you get, does he honestly think it's a magic wand where someone said, you are now a girl, and there's no genital alteration? But they didn't charge me because the Crime Prosecution Service wouldn't allow it. But she went for a second go, and then about 6 months later, she went for a third,
To try to
reporting me
have
for
the
something else.
police arrest you for disagreeing with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's her name? Do you remember?
Susie Green.
Susie Green. Well, Susie Green. Okay. She sounds, that's beyond imagining, actually.
Yeah.
So what did this tell you?
Well, it said that the police weren't to be trusted. I mean, I did look into the British police and how they've been captured by Stonewall, which is our sort of version of HRC. And they pay a lot of money. Each force pays Stonewall every year to be part of their diversity champions. Now, one of the most alarming things I found out,
what are
nuts.
diversity champions?
Anti-women, pro-trans. It's just nonsense. It's
Allowing
just
no diversity of opinion whatsoever.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Just box ticking, transgenderism, basically. But what's really sinister is in the UK, if I got arrested and the officer was a man who called himself a woman, he's allowed to intimately search me. So he's allowed to put his hands upon my person if he says he's a woman. And that's been happening since 2012, when an officer who called himself a woman took the police to court to have the right to put his hands upon women to do the full job as a female officer. Now, who in that courtroom is not saying, it's a bit dodgy? It's a bit dodgy that you want to touch women. You want to be validated in your place of work to touch women.
Are there any politicians with power in the UK who stood up and said this is all really corrosive and bad?
Well, there are some people in the House of Lords, but clearly they aren't at the forefront, but they are pretty remarkable, some of these older peers. They're beginning to say it. So we've pushed really hard in the UK, and now Boris has come out and said men can't be in women's sports, women have the right to have privacy and dignity on hospital wards and in refuges and so on. And he's also said that he doesn't think children should be choosing their sex. So we've done a great job Standing for Women, we've done our billboards, women wear these T-shirts, women feel empowered when they see our stickers, which sounds remarkably kind of immodest. But if you're living in an environment where you can't speak, and then you go somewhere and you see someone with this T-shirt, right? I get letters from women where they say they don't feel alone anymore. They don't feel isolated in their beliefs. Now, because of all these threads, and there's other groups that do it, although not quite as well, Tucker, I'm not going to lie. But there's other women's groups. And because of all these different ways of attacking this issue, we have come to a point where our Prime Minister has said something pretty brilliant. I'm afraid the fight now really is here, because you don't have a president saying anything remotely brilliant.
No, we have a president just the opposite, who is I don't know how closely you follow American society, but as our life expectancy declines and our economy unravels, he's spending his time lecturing us about how anyone who disagrees with him and agrees with you is a bigot and a hater and must be suppressed by the state. So we have just the opposite, actually. And it's highly, highly aggressive. But you came over, and I just want to again apologize for exporting that poison into your country, which doesn't deserve it. But you come over to the United States to follow this controversy over Leah Thomas and NCAA college swimming.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's great. I mean, it's awful. It's terrible that you've got these men in women's sports, and I know it goes throughout your colleges. Clearly, you have much better funding. It's much more at stake than, we're not particularly sporty. We don't really have the weather. So you are, this is big stuff. So this is great. This is a very good way of saying to people, look at the crazy stuff that's happening. Yes. It's big, it's front and center. He's not a small man. He's a massive bloke. Yeah. And so
he is a massive bloke. That was my thought.
And so it's good. It's good to see something so polarizing, I think. I think it shines a light.
But you're suggesting that there are other battles that aren't getting the attention they deserve.
You're mutilating kids. I mean, there's nothing funny about a 15-year-old girl in Oregon can have her breasts removed without a parent's consent. This is being fed. It's not even being taught. It's being fed in schools. I can't quite get my head around this country, normal, ordinary people saying, yeah, it's fine if she's 13, cut her breasts off, eradicate her fertility. For little boys, make sure he never has a sexual moment in his life, or just eradicate his sexual function when he's like 9 years old, because some Munchausen's by proxy mother just wants to feel a bit special, so she goes down that route. And if it's not these very dangerous, manipulative, crazy parents, then you've got lots of people making money out of surgeries and puberty blockers. You've got schools that are feeding it. You've got counsellors that will go along with it. You've got the state that will remove children. I mean, it's so barbaric and sinister and grotesque. I don't think most people believe it's even happening, because how could it?
So I'm struck dumb by your articulate description of that. For our viewers who aren't familiar with the term Munchausen by proxy, will you explain that? What you think is happening here with the parents, the moms?
Well, I think these mums need something better in their lives. But what they're trying to do is they're inflicting this ideology onto their children and reading stuff into it that doesn't exist, in order to elevate their own self-esteem, self-worth, place in society. There is one child who's quite famous, whose name escapes me, I'm afraid, whose mother admits to beating him when he was a young boy, for perceived homosexual kind of behaviours, so effeminate boy behaviours. She beat him because she couldn't bear him to be gay, and now she's one of the women championed for having a trans daughter. So her son, she's pretending to be a girl. Clearly there's some deep-seated homophobia there. And she's celebrated. And everyone's ignoring the fact that she really is a monster.
Unbelievable. So Munchausen by proxy, as I understand it, is a syndrome wherein almost always a mother, a parent, sort of transfers neuroses onto a child in the form of imagined illness.
Yeah.
So one of the dynamics, maybe the biggest dynamic in the United States that prevents people from being honest about this is the conflation of trans issues with conventional gay rights. So if you have a country like ours, where most people sort of not against gay people and believe in equal rights for gay people, which I think is the majority view, if you attach the trans issue to that, if you object to the, castrating children or removing their breasts, then you're like anti-gay. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And
totally.
Americans don't want to be called anti-gay, so they're like, I'm not getting involved in that.
I mean, that's a clever move, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's a deliberate move to attach this ideology onto other rights issues. They frequently use the language of other civil rights issues. Like, there's intersex rights in which doctors would make a decision really early on about a child with ambiguous genitals to make them one sex or another. Now, they didn't do it because they were malicious and they hated intersex people. They did it because they thought the best outcome for the child would be. Now, it transpires that it isn't. It's much better to let that child grow and to see how that child's makeup
That's
works
right.
and whatever.
There's been a lot of research on this subject because the intersex is a naturally biologically occurring syndrome is very rare.
Yeah.
Where there are indistinct genitalia.
But that's called assigned at birth. So that was, and now transgenderism uses this notion of assigned at birth. You're not assigned a gender at birth. Your sex is recorded, and in nearly every single birth, we can visibly see whether somebody is a boy or a girl. So that's borrowed. Nothing without us, which is a disability rights campaign slogan from the UK. They're borrowing stuff. I don't really know why it's so easy to convince people of this absolute lie, as we've already discussed, but it is, and it's happening, and they're using all the tools in the book. Like you said, people don't care what two consenting adults do. People don't care. It's the infringement of other people's rights, which is something that gay rights has never really imposed itself upon other people. If you don't think two gay people should get married, then don't go to the wedding.
Right.
But if you don't think a man should call himself a woman, you have no choice whether or not he's in your changing room and taking your rights.
And you don't have a right to say it. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, you can, rights can coexist. So you can have a right to get married as a same-sex couple. I think most people are okay with that. I have the right to have my own views on that. And anything else I want to have my views on, correct? Don't I?
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem to me, just as an outside observer, like an empowering movement. It seems like a totalitarian movement whose real goal is to strip the majority of its rights.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's got fascistic themes flowing all the way through it. This kind of, you must submit. Once the state gets involved in the UK, and I'm pretty sure it happens in the US, once the state gets involved in telling you what you must think, we're in such dangerous territory, and that's where we are. You're not allowed to say, I'm not allowed to say to someone in the UK, you're a bloke. Like, if a man comes into my changing room and takes off his clothes, I am more likely to be criminalised than he is if I say you're a bloke, you're a man.
And that's a criminal offence in the UK?
Yeah.
So we imported in the US, as a former British colony, our entire structure of natural rights, our understanding of natural rights, from England. That's our system came from England, with some obvious modifications. But our understanding that rights are inborn and protected by the government definitely came from the UK. So we imagine it's a free country. When did it become an authoritarian country?
I don't know. I guess there was a moment where a man called Count Dankula told a joke, filmed his dog doing, and said it was a Nazi salute. And he did it to annoy his girlfriend who spoiled the dog. It was a pug.
Yeah.
And he got criminalised for that joke.
Because his dog was a Nazi?
I don't even know if it's a great joke, but if you want to annoy your girlfriend who spoils a pug, right, then make the pug do something so... If it had been lesser, I don't know if it would have been such a good joke, but it had to be the most preposterously terrible thing that he didn't think, right? But he got criminalised.
He was punished for that?
Yeah.
For telling a joke about his dog?
He was punished in a court in Scotland. He was fined £800 and has a criminal record. for that joke.
What about all the normal? I mean, I assume there's still some normal people in the UK. Did anyone say anything?
No, a lot of people went along with it. Oh, it's such a terrible joke. I'm like, yeah, but it's not a crime. There are plenty of terrible jokes. It can't be a crime. You can't have that as a convicted.
How were you on the left exactly?
Well, it was a rapid departure once I realised what was happening. I had no idea. I had no idea that I thought the left was about helping people at the bottom, and bringing them up and providing them opportunities. I had no idea it seems to enjoy keeping people at the bottom in order to feel morally superior. That's how it now feels.
There's no question. And there may have been a time when the British Labour Party really was engaged in an effort to uplift the masses, which I'm totally for, by the way. What does your family think of all this?
Well, my mother's in complete agreement. My kids, they have to be very careful. 2 of my sons started uni. I couldn't drop them off. I can't be associated with them. They can't be seen with me because it could ruin their uni life.
University.
University life.
I'm just trying to translate the colloquialisms. Really?
Yeah.
Because you're considered such a far out person.
So if you know this issue, then it's likely you know who I am. So it doesn't, I don't walk around the streets and people are like, oh, there's that hateful bigot. But if you know this issue, you know who I am, and I couldn't risk their university lives by having any association with me.
I'm sorry. Do you think you can continue to live in a country like that?
Well, I keep saying to my husband, what about Florida? What about...
What does he say?
Well, he'd be up for it, I think. It's really hard going to live in a country where I have to go and say to my kids' school, no, you can't bring that lobby group in. No, you're not going to do it. It's not going to happen. If you bring a lobby group in, then we're going to have to write to the international parents, some of which are in China, and ask them if they're happy with what you're going to force feed my kids. So, I did go into the school and I said, before we start, do you know what I do? And she was like, yes. I said, well, this will be easy. You're not doing it. So it's just so weird because it's not real, right? We both know it's not real. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as a third category of human being, which means you get to choose your biological sex. And kids are not trans. There is no such thing as a trans kid, like there's no such thing as a vegan cat, right? It's not true.
Sorry, I'm a little slower than you are. It's taking me a minute to do jokes.
I do apologize.
No such thing as a vegan cat. That is deeply true. Because it's, cats don't act against their own nature, unlike us. That's fascinating. Have you, what? I know you've thought about this, and I wonder what your idea is about it, but what do you think the motive is? So a lot of very smart, very sophisticated people are spending a lot of time and a ton of money on a propaganda campaign designed to convince the population of something that's obviously not true and that is bad for them and their kids. Why are they doing that?
I think it all comes to power. It's all about power. If I have the power over you to make you not say words that I don't want to hear, then that's a powerful position.
Yes.
I also wonder if we've got to the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and then it inverts and it just turns to narcissism.
Can you explain? That is deep. Can you just unpack that a little bit for people who aren't familiar with what you're talking about?
So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is all about what a human needs to thrive. So it might start with shelter, food, love, etc. And then you get to the top. And we're fulfilled human beings. And I believe that fundamentally you need a purpose.
Yes.
Which is why I tell my kids that that's why we're not billionaires. That's the only reason. Because then I would be without purpose. But I then think you get to this sort of luxury stage of life where there's no fight, there's no purpose, and then what have you got? You've just got yourself. And we're in moderately godless countries with less organised religion, and I just think that that's where it goes. If you have no collective purpose and heading towards the same thing, then if you look to yourself, that is where a swift road to hell is. And yes. I think that's where we are. They did an experiment about...
I would just pause and
Sorry.
say that's just a wonderful description and true. You wind up with yourself alone, drowning in Lake Me, and that is the road to misery.
I think so. I mean, look, a hard day is always a good day, right? A hard day that turns out well is always a good day. And
The
I
best
kind
day.
of...
Yeah.
And I think these kids also have no fight. And what's the expression? Strong men make good times, and good times make weak men. And
Yes.
And I feel like I'm I'm harking back to a day of old, but I just think there's some tangible things that are missing. Like all the things that we do are less tangible. We don't go out and grow our own vegetables. I know that, you know, that's not necessarily something that everybody always did, but just the patience of the yield and all of those things, we don't have any of that. We want everything straight away. These kids even want their own civil rights movements. They just don't have anything to fight. And so they're manufacturing stuff. And that all comes back to narcissism and virtue signaling. You know, like when BMW put pride flag all over everything, so they got the rainbow colors all over everything, you think, that's great, but you're not doing that in Saudi Arabia. So it doesn't mean anything. It's just easy.
So you think that the people at the center of this who are funding it, HRC or Stonewall in your country, are motivated by sincere belief?
Oh, no. No. I don't think they believe a damn word of it. I don't think there's a single person that is promoting this ideology that if they booked a professional babysitter called Jane, age 55, and a 6'2" man turned up called Jane with stubble, I don't believe they believe for a moment that that is genuinely a woman who they're going to leave with their kids. No, I don't think they believe any of it. But power is a wonderful thing. You'll say a lot of things for money and power. Like, look at half the country's politicians.
Amazing. When parents go in, or when you have gone into schools and said, you know, no mas, we're not doing this. I'm just telling you, you can't do this, which is such a wonderful. I'm so thrilled to hear that you did that. Like, what kind of response do you get?
Well, we're British, so it's often a little bit rustly and embarrassed.
Rustly, I've never heard that.
It's all like, you know, they're just embarrassed. People are embarrassed because we don't do direct very well, but that's why I belong in the States.
Yes.
I feel I do direct because I'm just not having it. Why bother having a conversation that lasts 25 minutes when I just need to tell you that it's not happening, and it's no. So I try to have those conversations.
You have 3 boys? Is that where you learned that, raising 3 boys?
Yeah, well, I've kind of always been this obnoxious, I suspect. I'm pretty clear on what my boundaries are. I think they've kept me quite safe. I think a lot of girls don't know what their boundaries are. And I also really believe in instinct.
Yes.
So if it doesn't feel right, it ain't right. A mouse doesn't think they might feel a cat and just hang around until they get pounced on. They leave, right? They trust their instincts. So I really do. I think it's a gift to understand what you should be afraid of.
I couldn't agree more. I live by that. I always have. Trust your own instinct. Women are better at that than men are. Men overthink things.
We've got more to fear, I think.
Yeah.
That's why. But I was talking to one of your team, and I was saying that I was in a toilet outside of Heathrow, coming back from holiday, and I'm in the loo, and a man comes into the women's toilets, and I swear every woman's had this experience when you're in a female-only space and you hear a man's voice, and you just stop breathing. Now, you don't stop breathing voluntarily. You just do it so you can hear exactly what's going on, where he is, what he's doing, and until the moment that door shuts and you hear the walk away, you are not breathing audibly. You are quiet. You are really, really still. Now, I'm not a man, never been a man. It may surprise you to know. But I've never been a man, so I don't think men experience that. But women do when we hear male voices.
Men do not experience that.
And so that's a gift. But yeah, I'm just not having it.
Who are the other people who feel the way that you do?
Well, it's a broad spectrum of women.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Can you describe them?
Well, so you might have somebody like J.K. Rowling.
Yes.
She feels like this. I think she started off being a bit nice, and thinking there were two sides.
Well, I don't think that she expected to. I don't know her. Do you know her?
No.
But just from watching it, I didn't sense that she expected to spend a lot of time on this question.
No.
She just kind of threw it out there. Why hasn't she bowed?
I think what happens is you try and say two sides, and you say that I love these people and I respect these people, but women need rights, and then the vitriol is so enormous and the violent language is so shocking that you're like, right, okay, fine, all right, let's just stick to women. That's what I'll do now. And I think she will become stronger and stronger in her position.
I believe
I think she kind of has to be honest, because she does have the ear of the world. And therefore, I think she is right to speak up.
She's really taken a lot of, I haven't followed it that closely, but she's taken a lot of abuse, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had pictures of my kids shared online, where I live, what my husband does, what our house looks like, what schools my kids go to.
No way.
Yeah. And the police said, well, you do say bad things. So that's how much they helped. They target my husband's business, everything. It's relentless.
And the police are no help at all?
No. Until recently. I've recently got a police officer to listen and just said, you know, this is quite serious now. So, yeah.
You must be so disappointed in the country you grew up in.
I am. I am really disappointed. I just didn't know how little women were cared for. I really didn't. I mean, perhaps I'm the most naive woman on the planet, but I sort of thought I had rights, and certainly the right to speak. But, you know, you have the right to free speech, and yet it's disappearing here so rapidly, which is why I think here is where the fight is. Here is where I'm concentrated. It's
worth having a Bill of Rights, because at least you can point to a document and say this is guaranteed. This is the founding document of the country. If you don't have that, if you rely on a kind of common law agreement, you know, where everyone in the country kind of reaches a consensus that, hey, we're going to let people be free, which is what you have, it's easy to subvert that.
Yeah, of course.
Tell us, if you would, the role of the drug companies, the pharmaceutical companies, in this ideology.
Well, where there's money, there's always a chance to exploit, isn't there? And people like money. And these drug companies seem to really enjoy quite a hefty amount. I mean, look, you trans a child, and I use that knowing that probably we don't think that's a thing. But you get a child on puberty blockers, you've got a medical patient for life. And it's never going to be enough. I mean, the surgeries are so barbaric. Male to female, I think they're pretty bad. I think I won't divulge into too much of how grotesque some of these side effects are. But there was a young woman.
You don't hear a lot of these details, I will say. And we've covered the story 50 times. I'm not even familiar with the details, but they're pretty awful, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you fold skin into a place that it shouldn't go, it will rot. So sorry.
Duh.
And for girls, it's not feasible to create, like, let me
it's
find
okay. You're in America. You're slightly less embarrassed here.
All right. So it's very difficult to create a penis, right?
Yes.
I don't have one. I hear they're quite impressive items.
Men think they are, yeah.
Right.
Have you seen the Washington Monument?
No. I will go and have a look, though. So they're impressive things. Like, our bodies are impressive. Like, even if I talk about my little finger, it's impressive that I can touch a table and I can feel it, right? So I'm guessing the penis is far more complicated. You can't make one by cutting the entire skin off a girl's forearm, fashioning it as a tube to create a penis, taking a square off her leg to replace that flesh, which then often dies, and then all this bit dies, so she gets necrosis. Then they try and create a penis, which will obviously never work because it's not a penis, it's the skin of an arm. And one girl had 32 corrective surgeries, and one of the side effects of the surgeries, which she was urinating from her anus. You probably won't be able to say that, but the side effects, 32 corrective surgeries in itself is just horrendous, but these sort of side effects are something out of, I don't know, some dystopian horror novel. It's just it's profoundly, I guess the fact that it is so profoundly grotesque is why we don't talk about it. It's very difficult to tell people what's happening. But
well, we don't talk about any of the details. I mean, I recently was interested in, we have this admiral in the United States called Rachel Levine, and who has a couple kids and was married as a man. And I was just interested, because my job is to be interested in what was this guy's name before Rachel. It was a pretty recent conversion, actually. Couldn't find it. I ultimately found it, asked someone to find it for me, but it's not on Wikipedia, which is our supposedly accurate encyclopedia that people use here. So a lot of the details are hidden. Like, you're not supposed to know the details, and that's usually a red flag, right?
yeah, it's sinister as hell.
So are there a lot of these surgeries on young people, on like full the genital reassignment, constructive plastic surgery on genitals? Is that common?
Yeah. So I interviewed a young man, and he'd only identified as trans for about 6 months when he had his testicles removed.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah. I mean, even girls that don't say that they're boys, but just that they're non-binary, which is the most ludicrous, indefinable...
What does that mean? Do you know?
It means I'm very, very special. I think that's what it means. It means give me all your focus and I'm a narcissist. I think that's what it means. Or I hate being a female. And apparently the most any girl thinks a female is, who calls herself trans or non-binary, is breasts. And so they get removed. And sometimes that leaves no nipple. And there's also something called nullification surgery, which is from here to pipe work, literally pipe work. You have no external markings, no belly button, no nothing. You get it all removed. I mean, the internet
What
has
is that called?
It's called nullification surgery.
And what? So that's to hide the fact you were born?
Pretty much. That's to hide the fact of any of your human...
So there are physicians who perform these surgeries. Why aren't they imprisoned?
Well, I don't know, but I'm hoping a class action kind of lawsuit comes along and criminalises or certainly cripples them financially. But how, I mean, in the UK we have something called NICE, which is the code of conduct really for our NHS. And so things have to pass that to be done. So whether it's, I know you have FDA, but how anybody has got to a point where they can actually do these surgeries, like, is there no board where someone says, well, let's not cut the breasts off a 13-year-old. Let's say that that is barbarism and abuse, but nobody's saying it. I don't really understand why.
But I mean, clearly the most trusted people in any society are physicians. They would have to be. I mean, we go to sleep while they cut us, so we trust them. That would require a lot of trust. So this seems like such a profound betrayal of trust that you wonder why no one's saying anything about it.
Well, I guess there's the delusions of grandeur amongst physicians. Some of them can feel that they really do get to play God. There's also money. And there's also this lie that if you don't cut up these children's bodies, they'll kill themselves. And it's a very successful lie, and one that doesn't really bear out in fact. Clearly, some children do kill themselves. It's a terrible, terrible thing. But they are not more represented in children who call themselves trans at all. That is just a lie.
Well, if we cared about kids dying, we'd do something about the fentanyl epidemic in the United States. It kills a lot more kids than suicide does. But we're doing nothing. In fact, we're making it worse. So clearly, nobody cares about kids dying, obviously. So we'll just start there. But the drug companies are actively promoting this stuff, then, you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really understand how your insurance works, but I don't know why insurance companies are paying out. Maybe they all have the same shareholders, so nobody cares. But insurance companies pay out to access this medicine, and I can't think why. I mean, I've gone round and round thinking, why is anyone supporting it? Like, surely for insurance companies, it would be better for them to not pay up. But then I guess if they get sued, then, I mean, the litigious nature of this country means that people just bow to the whim of...
Lawyers.
Yeah, yeah.
How has being involved in this changed your views about everything else?
Well, once I'm called a Nazi and a racist for saying that I don't think you should castrate kids.
How is that? It's because I'm keeping a catalog of all the things that are racist. Shakespeare, ice cream, being against genital mutilation. How is that? How is it racist?
Because it's the go-to, isn't it? It's just shut up, be silent, woman, stop talking, and so once you understand the lies that have been told about me, and who am I? I'm nobody, right? But the New York Times has printed stuff about me that's not true. Once you know that they can do that, then all bets are off on what people can say about anyone at any time and anything. So it's changed my view on everything. I take no news report, nothing as read. I believe nothing. I was a cynic before because that is the natural English kind of disposition.
Yes.
But now I don't trust anything. I don't trust anyone. I don't trust a single news report. I think that I see more. So recently, the whole thing with Donald Trump, I think I'm able to see it for what it is, as opposed to the narrative and the thing that I'm supposed to believe. You know, I find it really interesting that the UK went nuts about Donald Trump. I'm like, he's not even, do you know he's not actually in the UK? You know, he really is. And he was democratically elected in a country that is free. And you'd rather protest Trump than like President Xi. Like, so come on. So I think my view on everything has changed. My view on the left and right has changed. I think the right might be a little bit sexist, but the left is deeply misogynist, and I'll take a sexist over a misogynist any day of the week.
That's fair. What's the view of this stuff in the rest of the, you know, one of the great problems with being American is we're so physically cut off from the world that it's hard to sort of know what the rest of the world thinks about anything. You're a little closer to the rest of the world on your island. What do you know, how does the trans stuff play in, say, China or Japan or India or?
China probably not so much because they don't go for any of that. They're quite homophobic. They're quite, you know, they've got a little bit of a Muslim issue problem. They're not very nice about anyone. So China, I don't think. Japan is crazy about anime and about women not being anime. So there is a movement in Japan of men that declare their love for 2D over 3D women. So I think probably it can be taken up there, but everything is taboo. Australia...
Losing the war was bad for them. Something bad happened to the Japanese after Hiroshima.
I know, it's such a lovely culture. And then you talk to anyone that's left, and they're like, I would never go back. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take
No,
your
it's
view.
a wonderful country in so many ways, but there's something really diseased at the heart of it.
Yeah, I think so. I think once normal things are taboo, grouped in with things that really should be taboo, then everything becomes just really out of perspective. Australia is terrible. You know, it kind of goes hand in hand with some of the pandemic stuff. So if they're crazy on the trans and the woke stuff, they're crazy on the pandemic and the COVID stuff. New Zealand, who knew? Totally whacked, totally crazy on... I had a billboard put up in, another group put up my billboard in Wellington. It got removed for hate speech. Canada, you can lose your kids. What did your billboard say? Oh, it says woman.
Adult human female.
Yeah.
Noun. Adult human female.
It's a dictionary definition.
And that was taken down for hate speech.
Yeah.
Quoting the dictionary.
Yeah. Australia, they're criminalising women, including sort of university lecturers. They're being handed out of their positions. Germany, they've gone for self-ID, so it means you just have to fill in a form and say, I'm a woman. You're legally recognised as a woman. I think it's the same in France and in Spain. You know, it's sweeping everywhere, and it's the same playbook, which is why it's extra sinister, which is why it's very powerful. So in every country, it will be universities, schools, healthcare, police, judiciary. It's everywhere. And it's really similar tactics. And the first thing they do, which is why my campaign is all about the word woman, is they make the word woman only okay to say if you're talking about a man. He can be called a woman, but I can't be called a woman. I might have to be called a cis woman or something else.
What is it? I haven't taken the time to learn the definition of the word cis, C-I-S. What does that mean?
Well, I think you're right not to take the time because it doesn't really mean very much. I think it's to do with chemicals, and it's like if a trans trans to change and cis is to remain, but I have no idea. I choose not to use the language of those who seek to destroy my rights. And so I don't really use their language. I refuse to use transgender, trans woman, none of it. They're not having any of it.
You're incredibly articulate in the way you explain all of this. What did you plan to do with your life when you were like 18?
Oh, I thought I was going to be a singer.
A singer?
Well, I trained as a teacher. I went into sales. I was good at sales. Right? I was great at sales. And then I had my kids. And once my son was born, I thought I was going to go back to work. And I looked at his gorgeous little face and I thought, I don't want to do anything else but to raise my children. And very happily married. And I've got 4 kids. And I was happy. I was really happy. And then this thing came along and I just thought, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? And so I decided it was going to be me.
How many people in England who you know personally are happily married with 4 kids?
Probably not very many.
Yeah, that's right. That describes my life, and I would recommend it to anyone.
Yeah,
it
me
seems
too.
a very rare thing, which is weird because it is the source of so much happiness. So what's your next move?
Well, it's got to be here. So I have a store in the States online, which is adulthumanfemale.us. And it sells all this stuff. And the idea is it does a couple of things, right? One, empowers somebody who maybe can't speak to be able to speak, which sounds really lofty for something as simple as a T-shirt or a sticker. But it stops women feeling isolated. It also means if someone sees you wearing the message, you be the billboard, right? That's the whole thing. You are the billboard, because I can't put up a damn billboard because they get taken down. So it's just about encouraging American women to speak. Look at the Loudoun County parents. They changed their kids' futures by going and talking. Like, what an incredible group of parents. And I think that's what women need to do. They need to, look, I know Democrats who knew Biden was going to sign this executive order to cancel all their rights, and they still voted for him. I want women to appreciate that they are enough. That's what they need to channel the fact that they need to fight for themselves like they would if it was their child or their best friend, and they would fight. And so that's what women need to start doing. They need to think that this issue is important enough to forgo all other issues. Because without our rights, we have absolutely nothing. We don't have a hospital room without a man next to us. Well, you might in the US because you've probably got better healthcare. We don't have our daughters being able to access women-only spaces without men in them. We don't have our sports. We don't have anything. And so my next move is just to keep telling women, and I talk to women, not for them. It's about, I don't care who you vote for. I don't care how rich or poor you are. I don't care what your race is. First and foremost come women, and then you can deal with the rest. Like, women can argue about reproductive rights until the cows come home, but you haven't got any chance of even having a conversation if you can't define what a woman is.
Right. I mean, if you really hated women, this would be a fantastic way to kind of subvert the whole thing. Like, we finally found a way to make them shut up.
Yeah.
By denying their existence.
Yeah. And isn't it so successful?
It's unbelievable. We have a woman who frequently comes on the show called Kara Dansky, who I don't know what her views on any other issue are. I suspect there's no overlap between our views whatsoever. And she's a radical feminist. But she is zeroed in on this fact. I don't know if you know who she is.
I know her very well.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
I think she's wonderful, just speaking for myself, because she's like, she gets that. She gets that one thing. Like, they're trying to erase us. You know, I have 3 daughters. I actually love women just by my nature. So it's like, she focuses on that, and she's like a savage. So impressive.
Yeah, well, look, it's a big fight. It's a really scary, it's like an immovable, it's like an invisible monster, right? You can't say what it is if you can't say what it is. You can't point at the monster if you're not allowed to label it. And at the moment, we're not allowed to label it. In the US, you can't say, like the Wee Spa incident where the man went in and sat in the hot tub or whatever with a mother and daughter. Nobody was allowed to say that was a pervy man. committing a criminal act of indecent exposure. I assume you have it here. But nobody's allowed to say that. We have to pretend that he's a brave and stunning woman who just wanted to share some space with a little girl for some reason.
One great advantage that women have, especially as they get to middle age, is they can use the term pervy man with total self-confidence, knowing this world is just filled with pervy men. That's just like, women know that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've come across enough in our time
I think you
to understand. But it's sinister as hell that we can't say it. I think
agree.
that's the really scary thing about this. We can say that some lech in a, who follows us into a public toilet who's dressed as a man, we can say that we don't like him in there and that's fine. But as soon as he sticks on women's clothing, that's it. We're not allowed to say that anymore, and it's really frightening.
Last question. Does it feel a little bit patronizing that being a woman, womanhood, has been reduced to clothing choices? It's a kind of a shallow definition, right?
Yeah, well, it's very suitable to the whole movement, though, isn't it? Because it is shallow. There's nothing deep and meaningful about the movement of men saying that they're women. It is all very shallow. There's a lot of themes that come from pornography and the sexualization of women. Like, if we weren't hated and sexualized, you couldn't reduce us to just our body parts. But our body parts are the very least of us, but they are definitely the very basis. Our bodies are the very basis of who we are. We are nothing without our bodies. We are not anything but our bodies. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have souls or anything on top of that, but the very basis of everything we are is our body. And so to reduce us to pretend that that's not part of what every single woman on this planet is just grotesque.
Man, you're amazing. Kellie-Jay Keen, I appreciate so much. You're even more impressive than the clip that we played of you. Thank you for coming on today. Kellie-Jay Keen. Tucker Carlson today's the name of the show. New episodes at least 3 days a week on Fox Nation. We'll see you every night, relentlessly 8 p.m. on the Fox News Channel.